Well, in 1958, there were two huge rock radio stations in Memphis, WMPS and WHBQ. I was a disc jockey on WHBQ with four other guys, one of them named Dewey Phillips, a crazy man, an absolutely insane guy whom everybody loved. Dewey had no boundaries and he had no filters. He didn't have filters on his mouth. He didn't have boundaries about where he went, what he did, what he said. And he didn't have boundaries about what music he played. So he was on from 9 to midnight and his show was geared to young people. So the radio station management didn't mind that he was so off the wall because the kids just loved him. And so he played things like, he'd grab a 78 RPM record by Mahalia Jackson of some really rockin' spiritual that nobody had ever heard. And he'd just get you crazy about it. Young people loved it. They'd start dancing to it. And then he'd get some new guy like nobody ever heard of from his cousin's recording company, Sun Records. His cousin was Sam Phillips. He'd get somebody like a guy named Elvis Presley and play them on the air for the first time. And the kid, now talk about going crazy about it. Phones would blow off the wall. He made Elvis a known person in Memphis, and it didn't take long for him to be known worldwide. Obviously, the rest of that is history. So I was right in the middle of all that, and music had changed, had morphed from rhythm and blues and pop, a melding of the two into that thing called rock and roll. And it was new in the 50s, and we didn't know at the moment how big it was going to be, or how big and iconic the 1950s were going to be. But it was such a magic time. And to be in Memphis, Tennessee, which was the epicenter of that movement of rock and roll, with Sun Records and all that that implies, and to be in the radio station where it all started, and to be friends with the man, Dewey Phillips, who truly started it all when he said, here's a young man named Elvis Presley, and flipped the switch. That was just, as I look back on it, that was just the most wonderful time in my life. And I'm so proud and pleased to have been there. I think Dewey Phillips was such a unique individual, so different from any other human you ever met before or ever will meet in the future. And the fact that his decisions got this thing really started, and I believe he really did get it started. He was heard all over the Mid-South, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Tennessee by all the kids. I think those things alone make him a moment and a person in history that warrant a Broadway show and a show at the Rep in Little Rock. So I got to tell you this show Memphis, which I have not seen, I'm very excited about seeing. And I would think that anybody who likes the 50s music, or who had a grandfather who was there in the 50s, or who might, for heaven's sake, be as old as I am and have been there themselves, or anything in between that, I think they'd all be interested in seeing this show Memphis, because that's what it's all about. I'm looking forward to it.